What is up, Planeswalkers? Theoric6 back with some more Magic. Commander 2018 Spoiler Edition. All of the decks as of now have been spoiled, so we now have all of the cards. I'm going through the rest of the cards, the new cards, not any of the reprints. Apologies for the delay. I am gearing up to head on down to Mississippi for the move. That's going to be life-changing. It'll be fun. Who knows? Anyway, I'm not going to talk about the disappointment that people have had over the deck lists. I think you can look at the deck list yourself and make your own conclusions. I'm not trying to convince anyone of the deck list, just that I think some of the cards are bad, some of the cards are good, and some of them are just cards. So let's jump into it with Varina, the Lich Queen. As you can tell, I'm using a different website thing to look at the cards. I figured this is a lot more consistent and less faffy. Less nonsense going on. I do need to make a window if I do decide to keep doing this type of thing. Anyway, Varina Lich Queen. 4 mana for a 4/4 zombie wizard. 1 and a white and a blue and a black. Whenever you attack with 1 or more zombies, draw that many cards, then discard that many cards. You gain life equal to that amount. You gain that much life. Pay 2 generic mana, exile 2 cards from your graveyard, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So a lot of people are excited that this is a Esper zombie commander, which is good. You know, people who don't necessarily want to be playing Scarab God or want to play the cards that white gives you access to now have an option. However, I'm going to stick with Gisa. Gisa, you know, I've had the Gisa deck since she came out in whichever commander set that was, and I've absolutely loved playing Gisa. In general, I prefer my reanimation things not to exile the cards. I mean, yes, this is a zombie deck, not a reanimation deck. However, a lot of zombies care about getting cards back from the graveyard, right? Gravespawn Sovereign, Diagraph Ghoul. Diagraph Ghoul? No. Gravecrawler. That's the one I'm thinking of. The 1 mana from Innistrad. A lot of other zombies care about getting things from your graveyard. Scarab God is a fine zombie leader because he can exile things from other players' graveyards, right? This only hits your graveyard. It is nice that you're able to just dump stuff in your bin. I wouldn't want to go super wide with this because maybe you dump it a little bit too much, but the fact that you have to exile 2 cards to get a single tapped token, I don't know. I just don't like a lot of what this card is. I think it's a fine Esper zombie commander. It just doesn't jive with my specific playstyle. Yeah, I mean, you could even do alt win cons with Laboratory Maniac with this type of deck, just because you're going to be drawing a ton of cards and binning a ton of cards. You're going to have a lot of cards you can bring out of your graveyard, right? You can probably play a bunch of Madness with this, a bunch of Flashback, because I mean, this is a technically free way to discard cards. I've seen people talk about using this for Esper Reanimator instead, just because you are, even by yourself, she draws you cards and bins some cards, so... Also, she's a fine rate, you know, 4 mana 4/4, totally fine, better than Gisa's 5 mana for a 3/4. But she's just not what I'm looking for. I'm very glad though that we do have now an Esper commander for zombies. I don't know, no, we don't have a 5-color one, because there are some zombies in green, and there are some zombies in red from Grixis. So it'd be next thing we need is a 5-color zombie commander. Next, we go to Yennet, Cryptic Sovereign, a 5 mana 3/5 Sphinx, 2 and a white, blue, and black. Flying Vigilance Menace. Whenever Yennet Cryptic Sovereign attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If that card's converted mana cost is odd, you may cast it without paying its mana cost, otherwise draw a card. This card is awesome. There's a lot of odd things in its art. You know, it has it has 3 different rugs. The main one you can see has 3 different prongs. There are 3 birds in the background. She has 3 horns. You know, different things like that. Her mana cost is odd. Her power toughness are both odd and they're different. She has 3 keyword abilities. So the fact that you can just make an odd matters deck with this is hilarious, right? You can even play Void Winnower. Which just makes it so it's an odd card by itself. It costs 9, and your opponents can't cast even spells, so now everyone has to be odd. I just think that, in and of itself, is awesome. But also, you now have a Sphinx commander that isn't Sharum, whatever the artifact one, who often combos. So now you can play your Esper Sphinxes without getting a bunch of hate from the table. Just that fact alone is fantastic. Obviously, you're not going to get complete value off of some Sphinxes, like Unesh and whatnot. But I think most Sphinxes, I think, are like 5 mana and 7 mana. There are some that are 6. There are a couple that are 4. I assume there's like at least one that's 8. But I think a lot of them are like in the 5 and 7 mana. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to brew for this. I have an Unesh Sphinx deck that I have been... So I have Unesh, and I have a decent number of Sphinxes in Aloro, just because they're good cards that work with Aloro. So I do think I'm going to try both an odd deck with Yennet, as well as a Sphinx deck with Yennet. I'm not sure if I'll keep either, especially since I do have Aloro, and I want to only have like one of each color deck, and not go super overboard, but I think this card fills a lot of roles, and I think that's awesome. Boreas Charger is a 3-mana 2/1 Pegasus. It is 2 and a white for a flyer. When Boreas Charger leaves the battlefield, choose an opponent who controls more lands than you. Search your library for a number of plain cards equal to the difference and reveal them. Put one of them on the battlefield tapped and the rest into your hand. Shuffle your library. This is a fantastic card for white. We've seen a lot of great stabilizer cards in white from this set, which is fantastic. White has always kind of been the color that gets screwed over the most in Commander, trying to go mono white. I mean, there's 8.5 Tails if you're trying to play like Death and Taxes. There are some stacks decks. There's Super Aggro with Isumaru. And then there's like Kanda that I know of. I'm sure there's others that I just can't think of. But those are like the main styles. The stacks and aggro and dumb, like destroy everything. And for a long time, I've had to play things like Catastrophe, just to say like, okay, if you're just gonna play a green deck and you're gonna turn 1 ramp, turn 2 ramp, turn 3 ramp, I'm blowing up all your lands. Deal with it. you took out like half the lands in your deck by turn 6 with like Boundless Realms or something. I still have a bunch of lands in my deck. I have an Endless Horizons out, right? I'm blowing up your lands, and I'm going to keep being able to play the game, and you're not, because that's what you decided to do instead of interacting with me. So this is another card very similar to Land Tax. That just, it equalizes the field a little bit. You do get up to the difference. It's nice card advantage. You can put the planes back that you had with like Scroll Rack or something, which a lot of mono white decks play. I'm very excited to slot this right into my my 8.5 Tails deck. I think this is going to be a good player. The fact that it's leaves is a little disappointing, but you can flicker it, right? So you can get a ton of lands into your hand since they don't come in, since all of them don't come into battlefield, right? So if your opponent has 3 more lands than you, right? You flicker this once, you get 1 in tapped, and then 2 more in your hand. And then the next time it leaves, even if the land count hasn't changed, you get 1 in play and another 1 in hand, right? So I think the value is there. It's a flyer, right? It's not a very big flyer, but it's a flyer. Suited up with some swords, boom, you got a good card. I really like the design of this. Magus of the Balance. A lot of people are a little annoyed that it doesn't just say Magus of Balance. I don't really care too much about that. It is a 2-mana, 2/2 human wizard. It is 1 and a white. 4 and white. Tap it, sack it. Each player chooses a number of lands they control equal to the number of lands controlled by the player who controls the fewest, then sacrifices the rest. Players discard cards and sacrifice creatures the same way. It's just like the other Maguses, except I think this might be the first one whose cost to activate it costs a lot more than the initial card it's made after. This card, if you don't know, is made after the card Balance that does the same thing, essentially. It's just a sorcery or something. I don't think this card is great. It's possibly fine. A lot of people have been talking about like possibly putting this into Legacy Death and Taxes, and I dabble in Legacy Death and Taxes, and I'm not seeing it. I need to see what Pleasant Kenobi says about this, if he says anything at all. Like that's how possibly not even remotely fine this card is. It's another white equalizer, but like you already have things like Cataclysm and the actual card Balance. I think Balance might be banned actually. So if you really want to play your Balance effect, you can play this, but you don't get to do it until you hit 5 mana, and unless you're playing a bunch of mana rocks, which you're probably playing a couple, it's probably not going to be too good for you. I mean, I don't know, if your opponents are drawing a ton of cards and or playing a ton of creatures and or playing, okay, maybe this card's actually just fine. It's probably not a staple. It's probably just fine. Excuse me. I don't even think I'll try this in 8.5 Tails. I don't think I get to a point where I want this effect enough. Like, I would much rather just play the other cards that hate on those individual things. Like, hating on creatures individually, hating on cards in hand, etc., etc. So, Aminatu's Augury is an 8-mana sorcery, 6 blue, 6 double blue. Exile the top 8 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Until end of turn, for each non-land card type, you may cast a card of that type from among them without paying its mana cost. So, let's say you have, like one of each type. You can play one of each type. You can play an instant, a sorcery, a planeswalker, an enchantment, an artifact, a creature. I guess technically tribal? Sure. I mean, obviously this is in the top of the deck manipulation thing. You have to make sure you're playing like a really even spread of different card types. How many, like 8 mana, how many different types do you want? I guess you only really need to play 2 decent cards in order for this to be worth it. But I feel like at 8 mana, there's so many other things that decks want to be doing. This is not a card I think is going to be a staple. I don't know how strong this card is, and I'm leaning on the it's a weak card side, just because, not weak in a vacuum, just weak relative to the other things that people are probably going to be playing in EDH. There was a lot of P's instead of this. So next up is Primordial Mist. This is a card I think is actually good. It is a 5-mana enchantment, 4 and a single blue. At the beginning of your end step, you may manifest the top card of your library. For those of you who don't know, put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, essentially a morph. Turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. So you can't, if you put it, manifest it, and it's like a sorcery, land, whatever, anything that isn't a creature, you can't flip it. But if it is a creature, boom, you flash something in essentially. You do not get its enter the battlefield trigger though, because it has not entered, it's just flipped face up. Exile a face down permanent you control, face up. You may play that card this turn. You still have to pay costs, and the timing rules still apply. The fact that you can do this like as many times as you want, the exile effect is fantastic, because you can play this in a deck that's just a bunch of blue creatures and a bunch of instants, right? Then you, at any time, just have the ability to have like a counterspell on the field, and then you're like, no, I'm just gonna go ahead and exile this and then cast this counterspell. I think it's cool. I don't know if it's actually good. I think it's cool enough to see play though. So I don't play blue very often, so that's all I have to say about that. Entreat the Dead though, ooh boy, remember that Gisa deck I was talking about? I'm playing this in that deck. I think I run Sensei's Top in there, but even like if you run Sensei's Divining Top, this card's great because miracles are just better. It is not like ever efficient not to miracle it, right? But it is just another multiple reanimation spell. It only hits cards in your graveyard, which is kind of unfortunate. If you're paying like Rise of the Dark Realms mana cost, it's just worse than Rise of the Dark Realms. If you miracle it, obviously it's going to be great. But even if you don't pay Rise of the mana cost for this, it can still get back a single good creature from your graveyard. And that alone is going to make me try it at least. I think this card is good. I play Entreat the Angels. I'm going to play Entreat the Dead. I think it's good. Skullstorm. This is a card that I don't think is good, that I could be super wrong about. My friends think this card is a lot better than I do. I'm just not seeing it for 9 mana. I would rather play other cards. Oh, goodness me. I'm turning this gosh darn music down. There we go. It's super in the back now. Skullstorm is a 9-mana sorcery, 7 and double black, 7 black. When you cast the spell, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. This is just like the other storms. I wasn't dealing with that, sorry. I've lost it. I've lost the plot. There we go. Stupid song. I forgot that I needed to change up the thing, but I didn't. Whatever. Anyway. This is the typical storm card for the commander storm. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. Each opponent who can't loses half their life, rounded up. I feel like there's so few times my opponents don't have like 2 or 3 creatures just lying around to throw away. Right? Like, paying 9 mana for this card. You can, I guess like if your opponent wraths, then this like just decimates someone's life total. Right, like let's say they're at like 20, like you've gotten to that point in the game, like 9 mana. They go down to 10, then they go down to 5. That's pretty good, right? That's just from casting your commander once, because you get the base copy, and then you get a second one. My problem isn't with like the cost of the spell necessarily. It's the fact that all they have to do is sacrifice a creature, and I feel like it's not hard to have a creature. I'm going to try this in Gisa. I'm going to try it, but I don't think it's actually going to be good. I'm hoping that it is. Another card that I'm hoping is good, but I'm fairly certain is bad, is Sower of Discord. This demon looks metal. It's so cool. Sower of Discord is a 6 mana, 6/6 flyer. Right there, pretty good. As Sower of Discord enters the battlefield, choose 2 players. Whenever damage is dealt to one of the chosen players, the other chosen player also loses that much life. The problem with this card, though, is that essentially it just means that those 2 people are now on a team to either kill you or kill that demon, or just kill everyone else at the table first. That's bad, because my group usually is only a group of 3 and not 4, which means if I play this and I name the other 2, they're just going to kill me, which means this card is kind of bad for that. But if you instead are playing against an aggro deck, you can name yourself, which kind of deters them from hurting you, because you also have a 6/6 flyer. The problem with that is that if you hit them for 6, you're going to get hit back. So, unfortunately, I don't think this card is very good, at least not in my meta. In a 4 or 5 player game, I think this card is sweet. But in 3 player games, don't try it. Just don't. Because more likely than not, it's going to become a 2 versus 1, and unless your deck is... So one scenario where this card is like actually good is you play this, name both of them, and then just alpha strike into the one of them that like has nothing open, right? Like if one of them has a bunch of creatures to block, one of them is and both of them are like tapped out mana wise, and one just doesn't have very many creatures to block. But maybe they've been talking about like, yeah, you know, I can't really alpha strike you because then the person who has creatures can alpha strike me. You play this, you alpha strike both of them, and they just die. So maybe in that type of deck, or in a red-black like burn deck, where just everyone dies. I've also heard people want to put it in Saskia, so there's that. Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow, is a 3-mana human ninja. Hello, ninjas are back, and she is awesome. She is a 1/3, and she costs 1 and a blue and a black. She has Commander Ninjutsu, which is just blue and black, just the 2 total mana. Return an unblocked attacker you control to hand, put this card onto the battlefield from your hand, or the command zone, tapped and attacking. Whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost. Something that we've seen several times in blue-black, I think. Definitely in black. I'm not sure necessarily it's been paired with blue always. The card's dope. You now have a commander for ninjas. I think ninjas are only blue-black. I don't... My Kamigawa set information is not very strong. But I think this card's very good. It never is going to cost more, because Commander Ninjutsu is an activated ability, and not... Yeah, it's an activated ability. And you're not going to be casting it, so it doesn't actually increase the command text. It doesn't use the command text. So if you find ways of just, like, sacking her continuously, you can keep flashing her in to get to be unblocked. You put this in a deck with a lot of unblocked cards, all of the ninja value, and hopefully we'll get more ninjas soon. Cross your fingers. We're probably not like ever going to get more ninjas, which kind of makes this have a pretty soft ceiling on being a ninja lord, but it's still cool, I guess. Loyal Unicorn. Speaking of cool, manly men like unicorns. I don't know why I said that. I mean, it's a cool horse. I guess it's not a horse, it's a unicorn. Anyway, this I think is one of the better loyal creatures, the lieutenant creatures. So this is a 4-mana 3/4 with vigilance for a unicorn. It's 3 and a white. And that rate right there is fine. Obviously not fine for like commander, but it's a good stat block. Lieutenant, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to creatures you control this turn. Other creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn. That's so good. Your team won't die to combat damage. Everything but the unicorn gets vigilance, so you can just attack and not care. That's so... Obviously, if your opponent is playing something that prevents, or that, like, stops damage prevention, it's not great, obviously. But it's just so good. I'm also going to test this in mono white. I'm probably going to test this in other of my white decks. I don't know which ones. You know, Aloro I don't cast very frequently. Daxos maybe is a good slot for this. It's not enchantment, but I often like try to get it to a critical mass of my token guys, my token army, before I want to attack, just because I want to be safe. But this definitely incentivizes it. Daxos is a card that I keep out constantly on the field to get value off casting enchantments. So I honestly think that this is probably the best of the loyal creatures. Let me know if there's a different one that you think is better than this card. I just think this card's so good. I guess the Drake just draws cards, which is nice. So Knight Incarnate, some more Evoke, which is cool. I like that they've printed like one-off cards. I think that's cool. I like when we just get different takes on old mechanics. This is a 5-mana 3/4 elemental, 4 and a single black. It has Death Touch when Knight Incarnate leaves the battlefield. Very common for Evoke creatures to have leave the battlefield triggers. All creatures get -3/-3 until end of turn. That includes yours. Evoke for just 4 mana, 3 and a black. You may cast this spell for its Evoke cost. If you do, it is sacrificed when it enters the battlefield. It's good. Probably gonna see some play in maybe like Esper Bounce or Esper Flicker, I should say. Some sort of black version of Control, those types of decks. But unfortunately, I don't think it's super strong because it does hit your creature, so it does kind of limit the decks that it can be placed in. I think overall, it's a nice option card, and I like option cards. And last but certainly not least, Aether Gale. 5 total mana for sorcery. 3 blue, 3 and double blue. Return 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So, I believe Evacuation is similar in cost. I want to say it's an instant, but it hits all non-land permanents, including yours, I think. This is targeted, which means you get to just choose things. The problem is, Wizards, you printed Cyclonic Rift. No one's going to play a card like this when Cyclonic Rift exists and is just better. My group doesn't play with Cyclonic Rift because it's just not fun. It's so boring when your opponent's just like, all right, end of your turn, Cyclonic Rift. I now have like zero resistance. I'm just gonna go ahead and oh, I win. Cool. I don't know. We haven't like, it's not like banned. We just don't play it because we just don't have fun when we play it, even when we cast it. So this card, unfortunately, is not going to see play because of Cyclonic Rift, which is real sad. And to be fair, and Evacuation. I think the decks that want this effect probably also would just rather play Evacuation. I don't see you playing this in a deck where like you don't mind your creatures going back. I don't know. The fact that this targets, I think this is a card that's going to fill a very specific role in very few decks. I think that it's printed in such a way that it's going to have a very distinct home, and I think that's fine. I think role players like that, totally fine. Anyway, since this was the end of the entire thing, I'm just going to go ahead and give a sweet thank you to Easy Mode, Chris, and Danson for being my patrons on Patreon. If you would like to donate, feel free to check the link in the description below. Let me know if you guys want to see me continue doing stuff like this. Obviously, this does not get as much traction as the arena videos, which is totally understandable. Not everyone cares about seeing previews, especially not everyone cares about specifically Commander previews, right? If I do end up doing something like this for the larger sets, it's not going to be every single card. I don't have the time in the day to do that. It would likely just be maybe a video every other day about the cards that are being printed that I'm most excited about. So let me know if you guys liked it by tapping that like button, adding a subscription to your mana pool, and casting a comment to the comment section down below. And until next time, all will be one.